Howdy, everybody. We're Super Monkey Fighters, doing another movie podcast. What would you change? This week, we're talking about The Invisible Man, the 2020 version, the most recent that just came out. I'm, of course, Loki, here with Papa Nugget and Monkey Feathers. Gonna let you guys know what we thought about it. So, before we jump into that, though, directed by Leigh Whannell, stars Elisabeth Moss, Oliver Jackson-Cohen, Harriet Dyer, Aldis Hodge, Storm Reid. The little blurb says, when Cecilia's abusive ex takes his own life and leaves her his fortune, she suspects his death was a hoax. As a series of coincidences turned lethal, Cecilia works to prove that she is being hunted by someone nobody can see. So, yeah, what'd you guys think?
So for a science fiction horror film, I thought it was okay. So I did like that during probably the first half or so of the movie, it really kind of played on your emotions on whether she was crazy or whether Adrian was actually stalking her from beyond the grave.
Yeah.
I thought that was probably the best part of the first half of the film, was just that kind of tension that you have, and that, because beyond that there wasn't a whole lot more, in my opinion. That's really what it was all hinging on for me. Even after they revealed that, or they showed that there was someone there, like, you still questioned now, to me, because it's like, well, did she just, is she hallucinating that, or is she making that up? So even after they showed the person in the suit, there was still, so, because I even questioned it, because it's the scene where she dumps the paint on him from the attic, but then you don't see any footprints, and it's like, after all the paint's been spilled, like, you don't see actually any footprint of him leaving. So there's still that doubt in my mind of, is it real? Is it not real? And so,
well, in all those scenes where she was alone at that point in time, so.
And so there was actually no actual evidence that she could use to prove that it was not her imagination. So I thought,
and I think the way that they started it too really lent into that, because you don't see any of the actual, like, they don't build him up as being a crazy abusive person. It starts with her leaving, and so
and so it's,
you kind of have to trust her the entire time, and so
it all hinges on that. And so you get thrown into the world, or her world, completely from her perspective, and you have nothing else to go off of, and so you have to trust what she's saying is true. But as an audience member, you're questioning whether her thoughts and perspective is legitimate or not. And so you're taking more of a role as an outsider, also trying to, just like other characters in the film, to determine whether she's telling the truth or not.
Well, and that's interesting, because that, as what the movie is, it parallels an abusive relationship. And so a lot of people who suffer through an abusive relationship do have that scenario where they're trying to get people to believe that this person that they're with really is abusive, especially when to the public they're nice or kind or something along those lines. And so you basically just described what it is like to be on the outside of an abusive relationship, because you don't know if they're telling the truth. You don't know if he's real or not. You don't know if she's just making it up in her mind.
There is a difference between what the audience and some of the other characters are experiencing. There's a scene when she's explaining the crazy, and her friend who's been helping her, who's believed her the entire time, you see his doubt come in. But the audience has experienced that with her, so the audience is more believable, right? The audience understands her perspective a little bit more. He hasn't seen any of that kind of stuff. So they start to really build that, and then she points that out, that no, this is what he does. he isolates me. He makes me alone. He makes everyone think I'm crazy because, that's what it is. And, so I think they did a really good job with all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and just the feeling of helplessness. Yeah. And I think that's really what they were trying to drive home. And kind of speaking to how they're portraying an abusive relationship, I think that's 100% what this movie's trying to do. And I think they do a really good job because it is that helplessness that they're portraying. And if we go to even when she meets her sister, like they're in a public setting and basically her sister gets murdered by the invisible man, and she's left to hold basically the bag because no one saw anything. They only saw her see her holding the knife afterwards. And so, like, how can you get any more helpless than that? Like, it was a great play.
I kind of wish we got to see this movie in theaters because that scene would have been hilarious to witness in real life. Because my wife literally screamed, "Hands don't work that way," and got all angry and said, I would have walked out of the movie theater at that point in time. And I was like, I would have loved to have seen that hands don't work that way. And he just stormed out all angry. And because that was, it happened so quick. And the way that it looks like literally like floating knife cuts a neck and then it's in her hand. And you're just like, but she would have to actually she would have to engage to hold that. And that's what, So there were a lot of those kinds of things that started to build up that it pulled us out of the movie. Me and my wife, kind of both together, but that's kind of where it takes a dive for me. Like they're building up a lot of tension. I did like that they didn't over explain anything at the beginning, but then I think by the middle towards the end of the movie, I think they under explained it all. I think they should have done a little bit more to showcase the characters a little bit more. They still leave that doubt as to whether who really was behind it all, and which I guess is kind of good. Usually I kind of like that, but it just felt like you just have to take everything at face value from every side of it.
Yeah, I didn't really.
So then you would
care
consider that what you disliked?
Yeah, there was a lot of things I disliked. They did a lot of scenes, like some of the action scenes where it's a problem I have with action movies and action scenes where it's, hey, this would be cool. Let's ignore the world that we've built to do that. So when they're in the mental, not the mental ward, it's the high security ward, and she's breaking out and he's attacking her and all of the guards. The first two guards that get taken out outside of the room, one of them has a gun in his hand and drops it right in front of her. And they don't make a big deal about that, but she's clearly looking at the gun. And then they go through like Matrix-esque style fight scenes where she would have plenty of opportunity to pick up the gun and shoot him, but she doesn't because they need to show off. They wanted to show the floating gun and all of that kind of stuff. And then as he runs away, then she picks up the gun and goes after him. And you're just like, I don't think this character would do that. I think she would have quickly picked up the gun and started shooting at him. She would have... You've already established at this point in time in the movie that she would do anything.
Well, she trapped him.
Stop this.
It was a trap.
And
the reason he revealed himself.
Yeah.
Like she set that trap.
Yeah. And then she has an opportunity to shoot him and doesn't take it because action sequences need to happen. And so there were some of those kinds of things that I'm less impressed by flashy visuals these days than I am by, kind of more cohesive, intelligent stories and interesting characters that you can follow.
So then what did you like about it? Because you kind of jumped into your dislikes. So what did you like?
I did like the opening where they didn't explain too much. Like it jumps into the night she's leaving him and just this over the top level of care that she's putting into things, right? She's clearly planned this out and is being very, very cautious as she's doing everything and then makes a bunch of really stupid mistakes. But
that raised a whole bunch of
that.
questions for me, which was probably intentional because
And and especially like opening scene, you kind of want to have those questions raised. And that's where I think that, under explaining it there is great, but then not explaining any more. They had plenty of opportunity when they went into other scenes where they started down that path to explain how crazy and manipulative he was, but then they didn't really commit. Anytime it was his brother was there, that character kind of bounced back and forth between I'm here to help you or I'm here to hurt you. Like he was very overtly, you're introduced to him and he's very overtly kind of an antagonist. He's against, the main character. And then the next scene, I'm all for you. I always felt bad. And he's crazy and blah, blah, blah. And then he's back and forth. And, that lends into the whole abusive relationship, manipulative, controlling side of things.
The problem is they split that between two characters at that point.
Yeah.
And so
they split it between the two characters and they didn't. Yeah.
So
they should have used him for a little bit more exposition into the history of the character rather than just, oh, you're the Invisible Man. Literally, visually we can't see you, but also we're not going to explain in detail anything about you other than what a couple of people say. And it's never in detail as to, it's surface level things on a lot of stuff. It's not, it made me not feel for the characters as much as I would have liked to. So by the time they get to all of the big action sequences and the high stakes parts, I was like, oh, well, yeah, whatever. One side's going to win, obviously, because it's a movie, and let's just get there.
How would you change it then?
I would have ramped up the creepiness factor a lot more. There was, a lot of it was scenes when she'd walk out of the room and then come back and something new would be there. Some of the special effects was pushed more into the fight scenes and not into just things in the background. And maybe it was there and I just didn't notice it. But the scene when the kitchen fire starts, just the little grease fire they put out really quick, but the knife slides off. Just build up that a lot more, and in ways that make her seem a lot more afraid of what's going on. Like she was afraid from the get-go and she knew what was going on the whole time. And she knew he was in the room the whole time, even before she was really able to process it. She kept looking in a certain direction, and they don't really ever say that, yes, he definitely was standing there, but there was enough of he's not in the room where she was normal to know that when he was in the room, she knew where he was.
Yeah. And to that, I think they could have done more smaller things to help show where to play people against her. To kind of amp that up, because it's one thing to show the scenes where she's just like dealing with him kind of by herself. I think that's one thing, but to play more on where he's manipulating the environment around her, and no one else is aware of it, but she is. I think that would add a lot more tension than just her kind of fighting him or messing with him, or he's just messing with her. I think that would increase the tension a bit.
Yeah.
So what would you consider your dislike for this movie?
So I actually wish there would have been more character setup with Adrian in the beginning, or at least at some point through the movie. It didn't necessarily have to be in the beginning, but he is no character really. So like me as an audience member, do I really care whether she kills him or not? I'm somewhat invested in her perspective of the abusive relationship, but as far as him getting killed, like the only feelings I have is through the abusive relationship, but I don't know anything about him as a character. So he was really weak, in my opinion. Yeah, I wish they would have not left it so open as to who was actually in the suit.
So then how would you change the film?
Do the things better.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of little things I would have changed too, with like when she finally finds the second suit, she discovers it because there's an iPad that has a video feed from the suit. And then she goes and hides the suit, but forgets the fact that there's a iPad that tells you where the suit is and that, that just never becomes a thing. It's like there's just a lot of those little like, oh, we need to do this, but forget the details kinds of things, which is usually my problem with a lot of movies. So there's a lot of those
what if
little
she
kinds
actually
of things.
Took the iPad? I don't remember.
She may
if she
have.
Did
I don't. I like. That's the thing is, it seemed like everything started kind of. Somebody was back because the dog was barking, and so she was moving so fast that either way, he knows that the suit is missing. So he should.
But maybe that's the point where Adrian gets kidnapped by his brother, and his brother doesn't know there's another suit. Have you ever? Maybe. Did you ever think of that?
Maybe that would have been a little bit better. Maybe explore that a little bit more. But
yeah, that whole transition, and that's what I have a problem with. Is like the whole who's in the suit, who's in control, and they don't.
It kind of feels to me like they were trying to do the dark universe that, like, the Mummy tried to set that up, the Tom Cruise Mummy, and they had a script for the Invisible Man, and then they had a script for another movie, and then when that whole shared universe thing kind of fell apart, they're like, well, let's just squish these together and release a new movie. Because it really does, there is a switch point where it's like, this is no longer a creepy, intense horror movie that makes me scared, and it's an action thriller where she's trying to prove her innocence, or like something like Double Jeopardy or something like that, where it's pretty much clear cut and dry that no, she's it's all real, and she needs to figure out how to prove to everyone else, and there's less of a doubt in the audience's mind going forward. I would have kept that throughout. I do hope they make a sequel, like a whole series of sequels, because she now has an invisible suit where she's the Invisible Woman out fighting crime. I think that would be a much more interesting take as they go out and she's fighting for the little man and turning the tables and all that kind of stuff. So Monkey Feathers, we didn't get into a whole lot of what you liked or disliked. So,
well, with this movie, I actually really like this movie. I like what they've done with it. And with you talking about the switch between the creepy horror type feeling atmosphere and then they jumped into an action, I strangely didn't look at it as a jump. I just looked at it more as she's gaining more confidence to be able to fight back, essentially, because she's been with him for a while and she's been dealing with all of this abuse, negativity, this control from him. And when she tries to leave him, in the beginning of the film, she can't leave the house farther than the mailbox because she's scared of him. And so I looked at it more as she's just slowly gaining control back in her life to want to fight back. Because for 3 years, this guy has been controlling her. He's been abusing her. He's been doing all these things. So I looked at it more as not a switch between a horror and a thriller. It's just more of how her progression went from the beginning of the film to the second part of the film.
They do make that very clear with like opening scene and ending scene. She is very confident and in control and orchestrated that and acted in ways she understood that he knows how she's going to be. So she needs to play into that so that she can get away with what she's trying to get away with.
Yeah, one of the things that I truly enjoyed about it was the setting up of scenes, the tension, the idea of if she's crazy or not. And it builds up to it because throughout the first, I guess, half of the movie, as you've described it, Loki, before it switches, it's a lot of tension. It's a lot of creepy, atmospheric scenes, especially in the beginning with her trying to escape. I don't recall there being music. It's just her going through her sequence of what she's trying to do and how she's trying to escape. And I really liked the tension that this movie created. But one of the things that I kind of had some issues with was, first off, him faking his death, where it's just accepted by cops, lawyers. Granted, his brother was his lawyer, but how can you fake your death and have so many people involved? And I think he's a billionaire because he's a tech mogul or whatever.
Yeah, those are some of those details that they just kind of gloss over.
They're just
where
like,
it's like, wait,
just take it
what?
at face value.
Yeah.
Just, it is what it is. Just,
Right, 'cause
Yeah.
just accept
They find
it.
out about it from like a blog post. So was there even a big grand conspiracy for that, or did they just write a blog post and then send it to her sister? And then, you know, the whole setup with the inheritance that he leaves her, that was another one of those things where, hey, you got a thing in the mail, and she literally opens the envelope. It's not sealed. Like, she doesn't have to, it's like somebody clearly just put this in your mailbox.
Yeah.
You're not suspicious about any of that kind of stuff.
So I had some difficulties believing the fake death, especially because I know that we've talked about it off camera for different things, but the more people who are in on the secret, the less likely it's to stay a secret.
Yeah.
And so with him having to fake a death, so fake an autopsy, fake people finding his body, whatever, there's a lot of people involved, so it's kind of hard to just keep justifying that no one has come out and said, oh yeah, he faked his death and he's really alive and whatever. But the one thing solidified what I really didn't like about it was the suit, especially when she damages it and it now becomes kind of a plot convenience where it malfunctions, but not when it would normally malfunction.
Yeah.
So the whole fight scene where cops run in, but they don't see him, the suit's still going to be malfunctioning. You're still going to be seeing something.
Yeah.
So I wish they did that better, where he hears cops running, he'll hide, and then his suit's still malfunctioning, and then he'll make an appearance. Yeah, that's just something that I do wish overall, is they handled the reveal of the suit, and then after handling the malfunction of the suit. I wish that was done better, just so that it was consistent instead of what it became, which is kind of a plot convenience to she's still crazy, but there's a guy still shooting up a hospital or stabbing people or smashing their heads against walls. I think my favorite scene in the whole movie would have been the end scene where she's on the phone with the police and then she steps out of sight of the cops and then she sits on the stairs being like, surprise.
Taunts
But it was delivered so well that I thought, yes. Oh, he got his comeuppance. Yes. Oh, that was probably my favorite scene of the whole thing.
Well, and it
especially
sounds like-
because he's glaring at her and he knows that she beat him.
Yeah.
After all the abuse, after everything that he's done, after all the control, she beat him.
So you firmly subscribe to everything was there's no mystery in your mind, and there's the thing that we have no reason not to trust what she says,
Right.
And there is the evidence, of the film with the Invisible Man attacking her, that yes, she was right about all of that kind of stuff, but we've also only ever seen the brother in the suit. So it's not that I don't believe that, yes, that is the case. I just don't think they presented the case well enough to make it 100% without a doubt, yes, that is the case. So what would you change, Monkey Feathers?
I think the thing that, as I mentioned before, I think the biggest thing I would change was just how they handled the suit. I like the idea behind it, where I guess it's cameras that film around so it can turn the suit invisible that way. It's kind of good in theory, and I do actually like how the suit gives off some noise so that you do kind of know that it's there, but it's not apparent all the time. So I liked that, but the reveal of it, the plot convenience of it, that it malfunctions only when it's convenient, only when no one's watching, and things like that. Because overall, I really do enjoy this. I enjoy this film. I enjoy a lot about it. So there's not a whole lot, me personally, I would change, because I like just how it was built, how it went through, and a lot of the small things that added up. It didn't bug me enough to say that that's what I would change, but to make it a more consistent feel, just changing the suit and how they handled that.
As we'll call it there. Let us know your comments down below, your thoughts on The Invisible Man. Did you enjoy it? Did you dislike it? Is this the best version of The Invisible Man you've ever seen? And let us know what we should watch in the future. Probably won't be next because we've already filmed a bunch of these, but let us know what we should watch if there's any other things you want to see, and we'll catch you in the next one. So, adios.